Hello there, welcome to the Comments and New Collaborative Projects by Espresso Global and Ukrainian Media. I'm Olena Solodovnikova, and it's great pleasure for me to be joined by David de Yong, a journalist and author of the book of Nazi Billionaires. Hello, David.
Hello, Olena. Thank you so much for having me.
David, the Germans are often used as an example, saying they were able to speak frankly about their own crimes and that this educated future generations. But your book proves that this confession does not concern wealthy business families. How does the world pay for these unlearned lessons now?
I mean, I think that, German business family, you see that in many societies, right, where the wealthiest and most powerful actors of a society, they think that the rules of a society don't apply to them. Where you have a German population which has done an incredible job at reckoning with its past. You have the elites, whether those are financial, economically or political, who think that they can only need to pay lip service to this to this culture and not really engage with it. And in turn, the problem that they cause for the world is that they lie about history. And of course, in a time when we live in such misinformation, where there's so much already untruths being spread over social media or through various other channels, this is a very problematic, where you have some of the wealthiest people in the world, who are actively covering up history and distorting history, where people end up receiving money in the name of Nazi war criminals or honoring war criminals who are responsible for the deaths of thousands of men, women, and children.
Yes, and what is your opinion? Why do Russians constantly speculate on the topic of the World War II, continue to the fight of the Nazis and threatening of reach Berlin again? Probably 2 years ago, at first it seems like a funny joke, but now they all want talking about that unavoidably big war involving NATO. Why they are speculating with this topic every time?
About you with regards to why they invoke Nazism and denazification, or
they started with the topic of the generally they started on their talk shows. They talk a lot of the World War II, about that Russians
yes.
Winners,
right.
And they were winners, and all in all, they were winners the second time on the modern history.
Right. I mean, it's a narrative, right? It's propaganda, right? It's demagoguery, right? I mean, they're kind of framing. Well, I mean, one could, they are framing this fight again in these kind of existential terms of where the Nazis are coming for them, which is just a total upside down of the truth and of history. Whereas, of course, the Soviet Union did play an incredibly important role in liberating Europe, from Germany. That has no bearing on what has happened, what they currently are doing to the rest of the world. Now, I mean, that's just historically inaccurate, and in a way, they're engaging in the same way with history as these families that I write about. They're completely distorting history and abusing it for their own purposes, which is totally perverse.
Yes, and at the beginning of the full-scale escalation, the Russians were often compared with the Nazis. Is it correct to say so? Because we have a term richest now. And what is the difference between them? Because as for me, racism is a kind of the simulacrum, the fake, without real ideological platform.
So you're asking, is it correct that that we compare the Russians, that the Russians are being compared to the Nazis, or that the Russians are doing the comparison, are calling other people Nazis?
The first
The first.
version.
I mean, there's no historically. I would argue that there's no historically comparison. I don't know if we could call them whatever you may call them, what we can call them. I mean, it's certainly, they are. It's an aggressor. It's an aggressor, and it is some who invokes a war without any just cause, without any reason, and already since 2014, right? I mean, this is we're 10 years. It's 10 years that this war has been going on.
Yes, but do you see the same something similar with Nazis and racists?
I mean, there's certainly the parallels in terms of kind of the fact that Russia has become a total totalitarian, dictatorial country where they murder their opposition leaders, where journalists are getting arrested and put behind bars, where hundreds of thousands, where they invade countries or a country or countries. I mean, Putin previously has also invaded other countries like Georgia, for example. So and has acted, as an aggressor, and seems to indicate that his ambitions may be grander than just Ukraine.
You talk about that they every time talk about the Ukrainian that as we are nationalists. Why they use this tactic?
Yeah, they use the tactic to dehumanize people. They use it if you label somebody, if you classify somebody, just like what the Nazis did with the Jews. If you call somebody else a Nazi, then you have to stop looking at them as human beings. If you call people terrorists, if you call them without their name or without their real identity, but you hide them behind some kind of anonymous name, then it makes them easier to attack them and kill, and makes it easier to sell your goals to somebody.
But really, personally, do you believe Russians can attack Berlin, Paris, and other European countries?
I mean, I'm a Middle East correspondent, and I'm already covering the war here. I mean, what they can do. I mean, yeah. I mean, I guess there is that fear. I mean, it does seem like he completely overextended himself. That Russia completely overextended itself militarily wise in Ukraine. I don't think they would have the military capacity to attack, the NATO countries or the rest of Europe. But who knows? It seems like the Putin's evil has no end. So, yeah.
In your book, you talk about the persons not as only the businessmen, but about their personality. For example, about Goebbels, love affairs, and other else.
Yes.
That is pretty cool. And but I wanted to ask you about consuming personalities of Putin and Hitler. Are their psychotypes similar or not?
I'm not an expert on neither Putin or Hitler, but I am reading this really good book now, which is called The Wizard of the Kremlin, which is a novel by a Swiss writer. I just started reading it yesterday. I would say any dictatorship, you have one strong man, and then there's this whole apparatus around it, which keeps it in check, right? Whether it's the SS or the FSB or whatever, And there's the idolatry, right? The idealizing of Putin. I mean, there's these elections coming up in Russia, and but in terms of, I've never met either man, so I find it hard to make a judgment call on their characters. But there's certainly they definitely share the narcissistic traits of what what idols, what dictators, autocrats do, which is to make themselves front and center and make themselves beloved over the country.
But do you
Make
think,
themselves like they are the country.
but do you think Putin is only about the power, and on what extent is Putin obsessed with money?
That's a very good question. It's funny because I report on hidden wealth, and my bosses would always say that Putin was the richest man on the planet.
Yeah, on the planet, really?
Yeah, they always thought that he was just that he had a cut in every Russian company. They all reported that it all went up to him. That they made this devil's pact in 2000, the oligarchs, and that's why Khodorkovsky got arrested and Berezovskiy got killed, and etc. Because they didn't adhere to that pact. I mean, these are rumors, right? This is not fact. But I mean, I would say, primarily it's about power. I mean, money is a side effect. It's something that comes, with it.
Yeah, and I want to clarify about the system building of Russian business empires. It's similar for the German ones, because yes, you mean mentioned Berezovskiy and Khodorkovsky, and in case of the Russian Federation, there was a period when Putin was getting rid of all oligarchs who were difficult to control. But in Nazi Germany, that was vice versa. He tried to cooperate with this rich man.
Well, he co-opted and the industrialists were happy to help Hitler, just as many Russian oligarchs will also make this devil's pact with Putin, right? I mean, there's a few which have been difficult, and even in Germany there was one or two which one who was kind of ended up being difficult, and they get rid of them. I mean that's how these things unfortunately work. I mean, there's very leeway for resistance. There's very little leeway for resistance.
Could you elaborate on that? So why he wanted to rid off from the most powerful men? They were some kinds of he was frightened from them.
Well, they didn't adhere to what he because he then in the case of Hitler and Fritz Thyssen, he overtook the Thyssen steel empire because Thyssen voted against the German invasion of Poland in 1939, and they want everybody, especially the most powerful people, to toe the line, and so certainly there's room for resistance. But what happens when you resist is that you go into jail or you get killed. But you see that in Nazi Germany, you see that in modern day Russia as well.
Yes, and it's my impression that, as your book mentioned, the German businessmen, most of them were not at start. They were not eager to join the Nazi party, but they did so because of the benefits of their business interests. And is the same with Russians businessmen or not?
Yeah, they wanted to expand their bottom lines. They wanted to expand their business empires. They wanted to expand their fortunes. That's all they cared about.
That question is the question is the main question for all Ukrainians now: how to make all foreign companies finally leave Russia? Because a lot of them previously say, "Oh yes, we came, I'll go away," but they continues staying here and make money.
It's very difficult, right? I mean, it's very difficult to force non-governmental actors with a lot of power, such as multinational companies, to do anything, right? I mean, you can go to buy a share and become a shareholder and complain at a shareholder meeting. But it's very difficult to do these things, generally. I mean, I would say that it's a combination of political pressure, sanctions, fines, and shareholder pressure, but of course, there's also the risk of, the companies are reasoning from their financial perspective, right? Not from politically or a moral perspective. They want to do what is the best for them, for their shareholders, for the bottom line. And it might be that staying in Russia is better for their bottom line. So they will, some companies and others get expropriated, I mean, the Russian government took them over. So, yeah.
Yep. I think after the expropriation, all this company will be have a very little profit.
Yeah.
What do you think now?
I don't know. I can't speculate on that. I don't know how these companies are run in Russia. Yeah, that's hard to say.
Yes, and what is your explanation? What does the imposition of sanctions don't work in case of Russia? Because the world continue precise and uses this tool, and it doesn't.
No, but it's only the Western world, right? It's only very few countries who are actually joined sanctions. I live in the Middle East. Nobody in the Middle East has joined the sanctions against Russia. All the Russians are moving to Dubai. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Israel, Emirates, or Iran is one of the biggest allies of Russia, North Korea, I mean, these countries continue to do business, sell arms, buy their oil like India does. There's a lot of, yeah.
But why, for example, position of Turkey and Arab Emirates, which are trying to benefit from Russian-Ukrainian war?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
How do you explain the position of Turkey and Arab Emirates, which are trying to benefit from the Russian-Ukrainian war? I mean that they are participating in negotiation as mediators to new pieces of market, gave the gray market.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's a bad initiative, right? What Turkey has done is because Turkey is quite close to Ukraine as it is to Russia, so it's kind of stuck in between. I mean, somebody has to try and mediate between the two parties, right? I mean, of course, these are countries who have a lot of business ties and political ties to both countries. So what are you going to do? I mean, Turkey shares a sea with both countries. So does Iran, but Iran has clearly taken a stance pro Russia. It's important there needs to be some kind of mediation. If they don't do it, who's going to do it?
Yes, but in reality, is it possible to move away from the concept of business as usual?
I mean, I think in the first months it was, but now we're 2 years in, and business. In the end,
we were so inspired with this idea, not business with Russians, but then we're back to this concept.
Sure, yeah, exactly. But then look at it, right? Because you have a Hungary in the EU, which is vetoing all decisions and blah blah blah. And there's just a lot of yeah.
So this is impossible.
I mean, is it? I wouldn't say it's impossible. It has to be uniformly. It has to be uniformly enforced, and that's not happening. There's no consistency in it. It's hard to, you have 500 billion of Russian frozen assets. The EU has this plan of releasing 300 billion for Ukrainian aid, but then people get scared. But then the next time I do business in Europe, and then there's a war, will my assets also be frozen? So there's all these kind of globalized implications, which one needs to be very careful with.
Yes, but Russians' argument, if these assets will be frozen and some process will be taken by Ukraine, all world market will stop. Is it possible that all market will stop without this money in Russians' money in European banks?
No. I mean, of course, it's not. You know, I mean, it's a lot of money, but it's not. You know, relative. You know, it's not. It's not that it can't function without. You know what I mean?
You used to live in Berlin for a
Yes.
long period of time. And what do you say about Angela Merkel? What about her fault for supporting all Putin's initiatives, such as Nord Stream and others? Do you think she was loyal to Putin because of some compromising material on her?
No, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
Conspiracy theories. What do you think?
Yeah, but I don't do conspiracy theories. So no, I mean, listen, you know, German policy had made itself already from Helmut Kohl and Gerhard Schröder to Angela Merkel, and now also less so under Scholz, you know, completely beholden to Russia because of the gas. And that was German policy. And in Germany, things change not very quickly. You know, it takes a lot of time for things to change. So, yeah.
But why Merkel was so big supporter of the all Russian initiatives?
She was, I mean, I guess she was skeptical of Putin, but you know, she, as you called, Handel durch Wandel, as they say in Germany. You know, you dealt with somebody by dealing with them, you know, by engaging with them, not by ignoring them.
Mm-hmm. And what is about the new German policy? Why they change their point of view?
Well, because of the war. Simple as that. I mean, they had to, you know, it's now suddenly it became a different story on February 24th, 2022. And they had to make a big U-turn. But, you know, they had their hands tied. Whatever were they going to do?
Mm-hmm. Do you know that many people rely on the International Criminal Court and Hague Tribunal to punish Russia at the end of the war? And however, your book proves that most business criminals in Germany have not been punished. It's because they have enough money for highly qualified lawyers, or it's because of all the system of the world?
I don't know. I mean, at the time, I can only say what happened at the in the late 1940s, and that was that, you know, yeah, the political era had moved away from Nazi Germany and the Nazis, and they had gone into the favor of the German businessman and again and against the Cold War.
Sorry?
You know, it had turned against the Soviet Union. You know, the Cold War became more important, and you know, it was more politically expedient to wrap up the Nuremberg trials as quickly as possible in order to you know, in order to move on, because they needed West Germany as a big ally and a strong supporter of against as a buffer against the Soviet Union and against communism.
Oh, yes.
So it was political expediency. So yeah, there's not much you can do about that.
What do you think about the Russian-Ukrainian war now in reality? Because we continue to believe in our we will be winners, but we are very tight. And
yeah,
what about the foreigners?
It's a very tough situation. You know, I mean, we're waiting for you know, the things in the developments in the US are very worrisome. And I don't know. I mean, the US aid package has to come through soon, hopefully. But you know, in a way, it's been a stalemate, the war for a long time. You know, the Ukrainian offensive hasn't succeeded for now. You know, but what is Russia also going to do? You know, I mean, it's a very difficult situation. And you know, it's a stalemate. It's a little bit like Israel and Palestine. You know, like how are you going to solve this one? It's you know, either Ukraine must win or there must be a negotiation, or or else, yeah.
The difference between Ukraine and Israeli style, that Israel is very respected by all the world anchors, like the USA, but Ukraine, like some kinds of we will do something, but not support you at all. How will we can be so respectful as Israel, for example?
I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of people have an enormous respect for Ukraine in the past few years. I mean, it's incredible what Ukraine and the Ukrainians have achieved in the face of the aggression. So, it's tough, and it will continue to be tough. But there's no easy solutions. It's either. But Ukraine is also reliant on the on the politics of other countries, which makes it very difficult. I think one of the things that Israel has done very well is to be self-reliant, even though it needs the backing of the US, right, which is its big brother in many ways.